In this video, we are going to write a response to a Task 2 question seen in Vietnam on the 14th of January 2017. If this video is helpful, please click that like button. It only takes you a second and it really helps my YouTube channel out a lot. There are other tutorial videos like this one at my blog, IELTS.com, and if you're looking for free feedback on your writing or your speaking, or you just want to ask a question, I'm still at IELTSnetwork.com, so please join us at the community there. Today's question reads, in universities, young women tend to choose arts programs while young men prefer science. What are the reasons for this trend, and do you think this tendency should be changed? Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is that this is a double action question, so we are actually responding to two sets of action words in this question. The first being, what are the reasons for this trend? And secondly, do you think this tendency should be changed? And typically in an essay response, you will commit one supporting paragraph to the first set of action words, and a second supporting paragraph to the second set. And that's what I'm going to do in this response today. Now, the background information, it's kind of a broad statement, so we can't change it, so we have to assume that this is true. I'm going to pull examples from my country that I'm going to try to pull examples from my country that illustrate that this is indeed a fact, and then I'm going to kind of analyze those examples to respond to these two sets of action words. Okay, and then you would have to do the same on your exam, because you do want to share tangible examples to help prove your position. It just brings, it brings your arguments into reality, really. It's not just sort of airy discussion. You're sharing some tangible examples to prove the points that you're making. So let's start with an introduction paragraph. So we just kind of want to sort of restate the background information that we have here. So something like, in many parts of the world, university enrollment trends for, let's say, specific demographics. Let me change this for specific disciplines, let's say, like university disciplines. It's kind of a hard thing to word, isn't it? Specific disciplines. Let's word it like this. In many parts of the world, gender often influences university enrollment trends for specific disciplines. Okay, several ideas going into that sentence. So let's be a bit more specific. Young women tend to engage arts programs. Let's see, while young men are more likely to study science. Okay, so now we've very specifically reworded kind of the background of this question. So I'm going to argue that what is causing this is maybe cultural or societal expectations. And actually, I should have pointed out that I did have a bit of a brainstorm before I started writing this, so I've already come up with the ideas that I'm going to use to support my positions here. And then you would want to do the same thing. So I really should have actually told you to do that before we got writing here. But anyways, so secondly, I'm going to argue that this is a tendency that should be changed, because if you don't change it, then the landscape at a university might not be unbiased, or it wouldn't be unbiased. It would kind of channel people into certain programs based on their gender, and then that might not let them exercise their skills, their talents, to the full, because they might have natural interest or natural talent in one area, but they can't study that because their society kind of dictates that certain genders should go certain places at university. Okay, so that's where I'm going to go with this essay. So I'm going to say I argue the reasons for this are largely cultural in nature, and we'll say should be addressed to ensure an unbiased academic environment. Okay. So I argue the reasons for this are largely cultural in nature and should be addressed to ensure an unbiased academic environment. So I'm just going to also kind of share a bit of an outline sentence, just to kind of give the essay, a sense that a sense of organization, I guess, really. So I'm just going to say this essay will provide evidence in support of this position. Okay, and then so some people will say, "Oh, but your introduction sentences or your introduction paragraph is so long now," but that's okay. I mean, these sort of stock phrases, they do kind of help to tee up the whole essay, and it gives the whole essay a sense that you had a plan before you started writing. So instantly, your overall level of cohesion goes up because the essay is already trying to connect its different parts before the reader even gets out of the introduction, right? And like I've told you in other videos, the introduction should be some sort of roadmap to where you're going to go with the rest of the essay. So my argument is very clear. The reader knows that I'm going to address the topic of culture, and that I feel this is a problem that should be changed. Okay, and why do I feel that? Because if it's not changed, it will lead to a biased university environment in a country, and that's not a good thing. Okay, so now let's start by addressing the first part of this question, which was, what are the reasons for this trend? Okay, so firstly, it must be remembered, or let's say that it must be recognized, that culture often encourages let's say the genders towards jobs that require specific undergraduate degrees, let's say. Okay, so I'm just going to work backwards here. So basically, we're going to look at jobs that societies typically deem more suited for men versus women. And my specific example that I was kind of brainstorming before I started was, the entire area of forestry, which is quite large in my country. And I mean, I don't even know whether this is true or not, or whether there is gender imbalance in forestry or not, but I need to come up with an example. I'm in the IELTS exam and I don't have access to the internet, right? So I'm just kind of, making these up as I go along. So I'm going to say that, to get into forestry, you need to have some sort of degree that's typically a scientific degree, and that this maybe is some sort of cultural reason why more men go into science than women, or why women are sort of excluded from science or feel they shouldn't enroll in science degrees. Okay, so let's say, for example, in more conservative parts of Canada, programs that act as the precursor to jobs. Let me just add in here scientific programs, so we're being specific. The precursor to jobs in forestry let's say something like such as geographical sciences are often dominated by men. And this is because people mistakenly assume women are unable to handle the physical demands of the forestry profession. Okay. So let's just read through the paragraph. Firstly, it must be recognized that culture often encourages the genders towards jobs that require specific undergraduate degrees. For example, in more conservative parts of Canada, scientific programs that act as the precursor to jobs in forestry, such as geographical sciences, are often dominated by men. This is because people mistakenly assume women are unable to handle the physical demands of the forestry profession. Okay, and now I think we can just lightly counter this because that will help set us up for the following paragraph where we address, do you think this tendency should be changed? So let's say something like, this assumption is difficult to support when one considers I want to talk about, there are women that are in, strenuous jobs, other strenuous jobs, and they don't have any issue carrying out the demands of those jobs. So I was trying to think of a word to talk about the rates or, the very large rates of women. I'll come back to it in a second. Enrolled in other strenuous professional roles, such as the Army. Okay. So I'm thinking of a word like large, or this assumption is difficult to support when one considers the large rates of, let's say just the high rates of women enrolled in other strenuous professional roles, such as the Army. Okay, and maybe we can tie in a second example that addresses, the pressures on men. So perhaps, people typically assume that science degrees lead more directly to employment. And I guess if cultures and societies, they have this sort of traditional, like nuclear image of the family where you have the father, the mother, the children, and then the father is sort of the breadwinner, and the mother is the homemaker. More, if it's more this kind of traditional thinking, then there might be societal push to get men into science programs, because that means that they will more directly go into employment afterwards. So let's say something like similarly, societies everywhere often assume that science degrees lead more directly to employment. And then let's just kind of counter that right away. So which organizations, like stick in here specific Statistics Canada, have proven, which organizations like Statistics Canada have proven is untrue. And so again, I have no idea whether these these trends are true for Canada. I have no idea whether Statistics Canada has proven this untrue, but just like you in your IELTS exam, you're not going to be able to check the internet, so you're kind of just making it up as you go. And that sounds like it probably is something that Statistics Canada could disprove. So that's why I'm going with that example. Because many societies feel, or we'll say still feel, the nuclear family is the optimal familial arrangement. The young men are pushed towards science degrees to secure families' future. Okay. So we've given sort of two reasons, and we've shared specific examples for why this trend exists. Okay, and we really don't know whether the trend exists or not, as I've said several times over. But the question seems pretty certain. The question knows that this trend exists, so we have to kind of support it and come up with reasons for why this is happening. Okay, so let's close this with just a clear sort of label on what we've done in this paragraph. So, thus, flawed societal expectations, we can say, expectations are clearly to blame for much of the gender imbalances seen in university programs today. Okay, now that's a pretty long paragraph. You could probably get away with just sharing one example. But I mean, if you're kind of on a roll and you're able to come up with two, like I've done here, one for women and one for men, then obviously that's a fuller answer. But I don't think it would be needed to be successful in your IELTS. You do have limited time, so if you're not moving as quickly through it as you want to, then you probably just want to stick to one example for why certain genders go towards certain academic disciplines at university. So, second supporting paragraph, we're declaring that we think this tendency or this trend should be changed. Okay, and why? So let's say this pigeonholing, which I believe is one word, pigeonholing. Yeah, that's not a word I write often. This pigeonholing needs to be countered to ensure people are not unfairly excluded from certain university programs. Actually, we could actually just simplify the idea more, because what we're getting at here is that society as a whole is better when people are allowed to pursue what they have natural interest in. So let me just reword this here. Let's say society is healthier, or healthiest when, let me just take this at this, when this pigeonholing is countered. Okay, young men and women are much more likely to advance their respective societies when they are encouraged to pursue academia, let's say encouraged towards academic pursuits in which they have natural talent and interest, let's say. Interest. Okay. And then if we can just think of one example that sort of shows this in action. So for example, Jane Goodall, the British scientist that did her work with, I think it was gorillas, or we'll say primates. I'm not exactly sure what she was doing, but we can make the argument that if she were pushed out of the science field or the scientific field, obviously then all of her great research would not have existed. Okay, and she obviously had natural interest in that, and she had talent in that, so that would not be a good thing, right? So let's make that our tangible example here. So for example, Jane Goodall's tremendous scientific work would have never existed had she, let's just say, we're just trying to say that, had she listened to, let's say, had she bowed to societal expectations. Okay. And then again, we want to just kind of wrap up everything in this paragraph with sort of a label explaining what has been shown here. So this shows why an unbiased university environment should be defended. Okay. All right, and I always finish supporting paragraphs with a sentence like this. It makes sure that the examiner is on the same page as you, that they completely recognize what the purpose of your paragraph is, and they see how this kind of connects back to not only the thesis or the introduction area of your essay, but also the essay question itself. Okay, so when they go to give you a mark for overall task achievement, these sorts of sentences can really help out, because it's just a very clear marker of how the essay question is fulfilled by the essay. Now let's go to the conclusion paragraph. So we just kind of want to restate the points that we've made. So the culture and society is the main push for why certain genders go into certain programs, and we feel that countering this trend is good. Okay, and it will improve societies everywhere. So as the above essay explains, cultural influence is primarily the reason behind gender imbalances in academia. Actually, let's keep it very specific to the question. Gender imbalances in behind why young, I'm just going to make it very specific to the question, so why young women go into, they were into, what did the question say? It was arts programs, right? Arts programs, and young men into science. Okay? And then let's just tack on, and countering this will improve societies everywhere. Okay? So that's probably one of the longer essays I have ever written in my videos. I see down here the word count is 354, but if I just highlight, so we're excluding the question, so that's 310 words. That's a pretty long essay, because I usually recommend that candidates try to aim for between 250 and 270 or 280. You are very limited for time, so you got to make sure that you're getting through your essay as quickly as possible. So let's read through the entire essay from the beginning, And you'll note how the different sentences work together, how the different paragraphs work together, how the entire thing operates as one cohesive unit to respond to this question. So the question was, in universities, young women tend to choose arts programs while young men prefer science. What are the reasons for this trend, and do you think this tendency should be changed? In many parts of the world, gender often influences university enrollment trends for specific disciplines. Young women tend to engage arts programs, while young men are more likely to study science. I argue the reasons for this, nice little connection there, are largely cultural in nature and should be addressed to ensure an unbiased academic environment. This essay will provide evidence in support of this position, and the position, of course, is a link back to the sentence prior. Firstly, it must be recognized that culture often encourages the genders towards jobs that require specific undergraduate degrees. For example, in more conservative parts of Canada, scientific programs that act as the precursor to jobs in forestry, such as geographical sciences, are often dominated by men. This is because people mistakenly assume women are unable to handle the physical demands of the forestry profession. This assumption, just restarting both sentences with this, I might change this too. So assumptions like, no, sorry, I'm just going to keep it the same. This assumption is difficult to support when one considers the high rates of women enrolled in other strenuous professional roles, such as the army. Okay. Similarly, societies everywhere often assume that science degrees lead more directly to employment, which organizations like Statistics Canada have proven is untrue. Because many societies still feel the nuclear family is the optimal familial arrangement, young men are pushed towards science degrees to secure the family's future. Okay, so here we've shared the two reasons why people are pushed towards specific programs at university. Okay, and then we wrap a little label around it all. Thus, flawed societal expectations are clearly to blame for much of the gender imbalances seen in university programs today. Now, society is healthiest when this pigeonholing, again, we're linking not just back to the previous sentence, but to the previous paragraph. So we're seeing cohesion on the paragraph level now, is countered. Young men and women are much more likely to advance their respective societies when they are encouraged towards academic pursuits in which they have natural talent and interest. Okay, so for example, Jane Goodall's tremendous scientific work would have never existed had she bowed to societal expectations. This shows why an unbiased university environment should be defended. Okay. As the above essay explains, again, right, we're linking all the different parts together. Cultural influence is primarily the reason behind why young women go into arts programs and young men into science. And countering this will improve societies everywhere. Okay, so very clear connection back to the essay question. So I hope you found that tutorial helpful and that you're taking a little bit of the language into your own writing. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.